In this zombie-infested, post-apocalyptic world, humanity has been reduced to living like hunted animals, barely surviving in dark, cramped rooms. And even that fragile sense of safety is short-lived, as they can't escape the constant threat of zombie attacks. One day, an unexpected knock on the door sends everyone spiraling into panic, a sound they hadn't heard in ages. It seems to be a young boy begging for help. For the safety of the group, Don doesn't want to open the door, but his overly compassionate wife pleads with him relentlessly. Left with no choice, Don finally gives in and opens the door. While the boy is rescued, his arrival comes with devastating consequences. Not long after, one of the women in the group hears strange noises nearby. Cautiously, she moves closer to investigate, only to be ambushed. A massive hand bursts through the door, grabbing her arm and sinking its teeth into her flesh. The others rush to her aid and manage to pull her free, but it's too late. The zombie virus is spreading at an alarmingly fast rate. Dawn arrives just in time to save her from further harm, but before they can regroup, a horde of zombies storms in, forcing everyone to flee in chaos. The three of them take refuge in a warehouse, with Jeff holding the door shut with all his strength. But it doesn't take long before the zombies break through. Jeff is torn to pieces right there, and his wife, unable to escape in time, meets the same fate. In the end, only one person manages to escape by jumping out of the window. Don barely manages to shake off the zombies and rushes to the second floor to reunite with his wife. However, the zombies are close behind. He intends to take his wife into a room to hide, but she chooses instead to rescue the boy locked in the wardrobe. Meanwhile, the zombies break down the door. Faced with the bloodthirsty zombies, Don is overwhelmed with fear. He opens the window and leaps from the second floor. His desperate wife calls out for help, but Don doesn't stop, running away without looking back. Behind him, the zombies swarm after him, closing in fast. Just when it seems like escape is impossible, Don's friends are waiting with a speedboat. He jumps in without hesitation, but his companion isn't so lucky. He falls into the water. Don tries to pull him out, but just as he reaches for him, a zombie grabs him from below and pulls him under. One zombie manages to leap onto the boat, but Don quickly kicks it off, gunning the engine to speed away. As he looks back towards the direction of his home, his wife's figure is nowhere to be seen. The spread of the zombie virus was rapid, and in less than a month, the entire UK was completely overwhelmed. However, after 28 weeks, the zombies all died off due to starvation. To aid in the post-disaster reconstruction, NATO forces, led by the United States, entered London and established a safe zone. Once it was confirmed that there was no longer any virus threat, they began bringing in survivors. Outside the safe zone, the risk of infection still remained, so anyone caught leaving the zone was strictly prohibited. Survivors continued to be brought in, including a brother and sister who had been spared due to a vacation abroad. Their father, Don, was the man who had abandoned his family in the midst of the disaster. Not only had he survived, but he had also managed to rise through the ranks in the safe zone, enjoying a comfortable life in a luxurious residence. However, when the children asked about their mother, Don's face darkened. He didn't tell them the truth, instead lying that he had witnessed their mother being bitten and, unable to do anything, had been forced to flee alone. Upon hearing this, the siblings didn't blame Don. That night, the younger brother dreamt of their mother. Since they didn't have any photos of her, the siblings were consumed with longing and couldn't shake their grief. So, they decided to secretly sneak out and get a few pictures of their mother, without telling Don. The next morning, the siblings put their plan into action. They managed to avoid the soldiers on patrol and successfully slipped out of the safe zone. However, they didn't realize that their every move had been spotted by a soldier on the rooftop. He immediately reported their actions to his superiors. The siblings found a motorcycle and, with transportation, they quickly made their way back to their old home. Everything seemed to be untouched, just as they remembered. While the sister was tidying up some clothes, the younger brother went up to the attic alone. It seemed like someone had been living there. As he approached, he suddenly spotted a figure in the dark corner. To his shock, it was their mother. The two embraced, crying tears of joy. Just then, the military arrived, and the mother and her children were taken back to the safe zone. No one knew how the mother had survived all this time. The doctors discovered a bite mark on her arm. After conducting a blood test, they confirmed that the woman had been infected with the zombie virus. However, she hadn't turned into a zombie because her body naturally had immunity to the virus. There was a possibility that her blood could be used to develop a vaccine or cure for the virus. But at the same time, she was still a carrier of the virus, posing a significant risk of spreading it. When Don learned that his wife was still alive, he couldn't believe it. His face showed pure disbelief. However, the two children were deeply disappointed in him because he had lied. They accused him of being a liar. Faced with their accusations, Don was speechless and could only hope that his wife would forgive him. Using his position, Don managed to get access to the lab where his wife was being kept. He apologized to her over and over, saying how sorry he was. Strangely, without hesitation, she forgave him. Unable to contain his emotions, Don kissed her. But that kiss triggered something far worse, something that would soon plunge the entire human world into another catastrophic disaster. Soon, Don began to feel unwell as the virus rapidly spread through his body. He struggled desperately, but his mind began to slip away, losing his sanity. In just a few seconds, Don had completely transformed into a zombie, and his wife became his first victim. But the horror didn't end there. Don ran outside and began attacking others, spreading the infection further. It didn't take long before the entire medical center was overrun. Seeing that the situation had spiraled out of control, the military immediately initiated Red Code and locked down the entire area. All the survivors were grouped together and quarantined in one location. However, it wasn't long before the mutated Don broke into the quarantine zone, and those inside became easy prey. Panic swept through the crowd as people desperately tried to escape. They broke through the quarantine doors, running frantically towards the outside. At first, the military only shot the infected mutants, but as the number of infected grew rapidly, they could no longer tell the difference between zombies and humans. So, they began indiscriminate attacks. Better to kill 1,000 innocent people than to let even one infected person escape. Meanwhile, the female doctor managed to rescue the siblings. Since they had inherited their mother's genes, it was highly likely that they carried the antibody in their bodies. If a cure for the virus could be developed, they would be humanity's last hope. The three of them ended up hiding in a warehouse. On the rooftop, a soldier named Doyle, unable to bear killing innocent survivors, chose to abandon his post. He came down to the warehouse, where he stumbled upon the doctor and the siblings. The doctor confronted Doyle, questioning why he had left his duty, clearly unaware of the gravity of the situation. Doyle didn't want to explain and simply told her that if they wanted to survive, they needed to follow him. The survivors in the warehouse, unwilling to wait for death, agreed to follow Doyle. However, just after they left, Doyle received a message from his comrade, Flynn. The military had failed to contain the virus, and within minutes, they would launch incendiary bombs on the entire safe zone. But Flynn knew of a park that was still safe, so they agreed to meet there. After the call, Doyle led the group, running at full speed, but he didn't notice the sniper on the roof. Several survivors were tragically shot, and the doctor was also hit in the thigh. Fortunately, the remaining survivors quickly found cover. Doyle pinpointed the sniper's position and initially planned to send one of the men out to draw fire, giving him the chance to take out the sniper. But the man refused to go, no matter what. Just as the two of them were at an impasse, the younger brother suddenly stepped forward. Using quick, serpentine movements, he expertly dodged a barrage of bullets, allowing Doyle the opportunity to eliminate the sniper. Afterward, they climbed over a fence. Just then, a plane carrying out a mission flew overhead. The group ran at full speed, managing to reach an underground tunnel under the river just before the bombs were dropped. In an instant, the entire safe zone was engulfed in a fiery inferno. The group in the tunnel barely escaped with their lives. Luckily, they made it out just in time. However, even after such a massive strike, a group of survivors managed to escape the safe zone. The next day, the group arrived at the designated park. The female doctor turned to Doyle and said, "These kids are special." She explained that their mother had a natural immunity to the virus, and the siblings likely inherited that gene. If there was any chance of reversing the zombie apocalypse, these two were the key. She stressed that they must be protected at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing their own lives. Doyle understood what the doctor was saying and nodded firmly in agreement. Just then, Flynn contacted him over the radio, saying he was on his way. Doyle immediately led the group to the designated landing zone. However, they were not prepared for the large horde of zombies that was heading their way. Fortunately, they were able to take cover in the tall grass and avoid being spotted. At that moment, Flynn arrived in the helicopter, but when he saw the number of people with Doyle, he was taken aback. He told Doyle that he could only take him, as the helicopter would be shot down before reaching the base if it carried too many. With the zombies closing in, one terrified survivor, a Creek, rushed over and grabbed onto the helicopter's landing gear. Flynn warned him to let go immediately, but the man refused. Furious, Flynn flew the helicopter toward a horde of zombies. The helicopter's rotor blades turned into a meat grinder, wiping out most of the zombies, and the Crete was thrown off the landing gear, falling to his death. More zombies quickly swarmed the area. With no other option, Doyle had to give up on the helicopter rescue and led the remaining survivors away from the landing zone. However, Flynn didn't abandon Doyle. He radioed him, saying they'd meet up at the next location. The zombie horde relentlessly pursued them, forcing Doyle and the others to fight their way back into the city. What they didn't know was that the military had deployed biochemical weapons in the city to eradicate all the zombies. The group nearly ran straight into the toxic gas, but by the time they realized it, there was no way to escape. Fortunately, they found a car parked by the side of the road, quickly climbing in and sealing all the vents. At that moment, the zombies were closing in, but they didn't struggle for long, as they were quickly taken down by the biochemical agent. Doyle tried to start the car, but the engine refused to turn over. Looking through the rearview mirror, he saw a group of soldiers in protective suits cleaning up the bodies. If they were spotted, they would be treated the same as the zombies and eliminated. With no time to hesitate, Doyle made a quick decision. To help the others escape, he got out of the car and pushed it by hand. The car eventually started, but Doyle tragically didn't make it. He was burned alive by the flamethrower. The doctor, not wasting a moment, took the wheel and sped off. However, the military had no intention of letting them go. A helicopter appeared overhead, opening fire on them. It was clear that they would not survive if they kept going in a straight line. In a desperate move, the doctor slammed on the gas, swerving into the entrance of the subway station. They had planned to reach the helicopter rendezvous point via the tunnel, but inside, it was pitch black. They could only move forward slowly, relying on their night vision goggles. Suddenly, the siblings lost their footing, and they tumbled down the escalator. The doctor managed to find the sister, but as she turned around, a zombie suddenly appeared behind her. The doctor was bitten, and tragically, she met her end right there. The sister dared not make a sound. After the zombie left, she picked up a rifle that had fallen to the ground. Meanwhile, the brother, searching for his sister, suddenly saw a familiar figure. As he looked closer, he realized it was their father, Don. Before the brother could react, Don pounced on him, biting into his flesh. The sister arrived just in time to see this horrifying scene. Without hesitation, she pulled the trigger and put her zombified father down herself. Fearing that she might accidentally hurt her sister, the brother immediately ran away. But not far behind, he collapsed. When the sister reached him, she discovered that he hadn't turned into a zombie. It seemed that, like their mother, he had inherited her immunity. Together, they left the subway station and made their way to the stadium, where Flynn had been waiting for them. When he saw that his comrade Doyle hadn't shown up, he immediately aimed his gun at the siblings. After learning that Doyle had sacrificed himself, Flynn didn't say much. He simply led the brother and sister out of the UK. However, what Flynn didn't know was that the brother was carrying the zombie virus, and their destination was France. Soon after, a helicopter crashed on French soil, and the virus quickly spread through Paris. Thanks to the actions of the main characters, the zombie virus was successfully unleashed across the entire world.